I have yet to find a man, however exalted in his station, who did not do better work and put forth greater effort under a spirit of approval than under a spirit of criticism. Charles M. Schwab, first president of U.S. Steel Corporation.
What is the language of leadership? It is the skills, traits, lessons learned, communications, and inspirations of leaders. The Language of Leadership podcast will help you develop the successful tools renowned leaders have discovered and have used effectively, sharing with you how to be the leader you desire to be and the leader your team will desire to follow. Now, here is your host, Chuck Marting.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Language of Leadership. I'm your host, Chuck Marting. With this week being the Christmas holiday and with one of the most asked questions I receive, I felt now more than any other time would be perfect to bring up this one leadership skill that is responsible for more transformations of individuals and teams than possibly any other skill we can discuss. I would venture to say every one of us at some point in our leadership journey have seen this skill practiced with such skill and grace that it astonishes and motivates. Others have wished that their leader or leaders would learn this skill to help promote a healthy and productive team. What we're talking about this week is gratitude. I have seen many leaders with this skill and use it so effectively that it not only made a noticeable and recognizable difference in their team as a whole, but it inspired each individual team member to do more. I have been on teams that, unfortunately, the leader was missing this one ingredient in their leadership that could have made a total difference in everything they desired to accomplish, but was unable to do so because of the lack of teamwork, desire, passion, or caring if anything they did was successful or not. It literally prevented individuals from caring. Most often, a lackadaisical attitude developed and truly people were doing the very minimum or less sometimes just going through the motions. We recently heard in the news and in other social media posts the term quiet quitting, which is described as someone who has decided to limit their job output to only those things strictly stated in their job description. They do not take on any additional assignments, and in fact, they have decided to look for ways to do the absolute minimum to complete their job responsibilities. So I guess my question to you or anyone practicing this or think that it is a good idea would be this. Is this an employee problem or is it a leadership problem? I've never known anyone to complain about receiving too much positive feedback. How about you? In fact, just the opposite is true. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a manager, a teacher, a parent, or a coach, or simply just a friend, if you want to be successful with other people, you must master the art of gratitude. I once had a supervisor who people avoided bidding to be on his team for shifts. When we bid for shifts, the lower your seniority was, the least likely you would get on the team that you truly wanted to be on. You got whatever was left over. And you see, this supervisor had a lot of potential of building a great team. However, this supervisor had a reputation of not only micromanaging and having his own, but he, quote unquote, had his own agenda. And if you didn't do the things the way he wanted to make him look good, he would do everything in his power to make your life miserable. And this was while you were on his team, and it reflected on the whole team. Being on this team was very hard. There were days you didn't want to be there, and there were days you were just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And all you could do, and I mean all you could do, was just shake your head and wonder why or even how did this man become a supervisor? And then there was the other end of the spectrum, where we had a supervisor that went out of his way to not only serve the people that were on his team, but to take the time to talk to them as a team and then as an individual team member. He would be checking in with them to see how they were doing with their goals that they had set and what he could do as a supervisor to help them not only achieve their goals, but also their personal goals. That was what was needed, and it needed to be done. And as they worked as a team, those things were accomplished. I remember how wildly different these two supervisors were, having worked for both of them. And it was like night and day difference. It was amazing to watch because it was very obvious that the one team under the supervisor that was micromanaging did not have the full support, trust, or even enthusiasm from his team to not only work for him, but to do the things that they needed to get done. And then on the other hand, you had the other supervisor who always had a number of individuals who were volunteering to be moved to his shift. And they went to him and they talked to him. And instead of going to him asking why they were not accomplishing the things that were being asked, these people were coming to him and asking him, is there anything else that they could do to help his team and help him as a leader? Wow, what an extreme difference from one leader to another. And why was that? Well, the second leader, it was gratitude. He took the time to acknowledge each individual on his team, and he knew who they were. He knew what their goals were, and he set out to help them achieve those goals that they had set, and with what an extreme difference from one supervisor to another, one that took the time to care about the needs of his team, and the other just took the time to make sure the team knew what his needs were and what he expected. Now, imagine, if you will, and if you think about, you've probably experienced or seen this on your own and probably have wondered to yourself, what is this person trying to accomplish by teaching or leading people the way he or she is? I know that sooner than later, all of us experience times in our lives where our whole world seems to be crashing down around us, leaving us to feel alone, frustrated, and adrift. It can and it does happen to all of us. None of us are immune. However, there is one thing that we can do in any circumstance, and that is to be grateful. Time and time again, I've seen where both leaders and team members have dug down deep and put aside all the bitterness and the frustration that they have felt in that moment, and instead found ways to be grateful in their circumstances. So I know now you're saying, Chuck, what would and could I possibly be grateful for when my life is falling apart around me? I know it's hard to show or be grateful for those things when things are not going our way and how we envision them to go. But if we can envision or see those times and be thankful in our circumstances at that point of time and find something to be grateful for, it can and will begin to turn everything around, starting right at that time of reflection. Dieter F. Uchtdorf shared a story of gratitude similar to this story that I shared with you. In his story, he said there was a waiter who asked a customer whether he enjoyed his meal, and the guest replied that everything was fine, but it would have been better if there had been more bread that had been served in that time with his meal. The next day, when the man returned, the waiter doubled the amount of bread, giving him 4 slices instead of 2, but still the man was not happy. So the next day, the waiter doubled the bread again, without success. But on the 4th day, the waiter was really determined to make that man happy, so he took a 9-foot-long loaf of bread, cut it in half, and with a smile served it to the customer. The waiter could scarcely wait for the man's reaction. After the meal, the man looked up and he said, "Good as always, but I see you're back to giving only 2 slices of bread." The bottom line, we choose to limit our gratitude based on the blessings we feel or lack in our life. We can choose to be grateful no matter what. We can choose to be grateful no matter what this type of gratitude transcends. So whatever is happening around us is surpassment. It can be disappointment. It can be discouraging. It can be despair. It can bloom just as beautifully in the icy landscape of winter as it does in the pleasant warmth of summer. When we reflect on what we are grateful for in our circumstances, we can experience gentle peace in the midst of turbulence and grief. We can still lift up our hearts in praise and in pain, and we can still show gratitude and be thankful for what we have. Being grateful in times of distress does not mean that we are pleased with our circumstances, but it does mean that through the eyes of faith, we can look beyond our present-day challenges, and gratitude heals the heart and it expands the mind. Being grateful in our circumstances is an act of faith, True gratitude is an expression of hope. It comes from acknowledging that we do not always understand the trials of life, but we are trusting that one day we will. My challenge to you, especially during this holiday season, where we give thanks and gratitude being with our family and friends and celebrating Christmas, is to take time for reflection and know that things that have happened to you this past year that you're grateful for, not only that, but take time out of each day. And I challenge you to find 3 things to be grateful for. Just 3. And as you do that, and as you write down these things, you're going to find that list will keep growing and growing. And doing this will change your heart, change your mind. It will hit you in the very soul of your body. You know, there's an exercise that I'm going to attach to this week's lesson that was taught by Jack Canfield, which is called the Rampage of Appreciation. You know, sometimes we have people that don't feel grateful or cannot see the gratitude with everything around them. So this exercise gives you an opportunity to reflect and to look and to see those things around you a little more clearly, and so that you can also be truly grateful for them. In this exercise, you simply look around where you're at and you gently notice something that pleases you. You hold your attention on it, and while you think about how wonderful, beautiful, or useful it is, if it's an item you own or appreciate the fact that it is already in your life and continuing to be observed, and you observe it until you feel your appreciation expand. When you do this, you're telling the universe, give me more of this. Eventually, choose another object to appreciate and then go on to another. When this exercise is done truly with your eyes open, you're going to find that you'll walk away excited, smiling, and feeling happier even after the exercise. And after that exercise, knowing that there are still things in your life that you can truly be grateful for, if you can do this, you can do this with your team. You can make an impact in their life, and you can change how you and your team take on tasks or any other assignments and do so successfully. I know that this week's message is a little bit short and sweet, but it's a very strong lesson. And this is something that I have seen that has changed leadership tremendously, and that is the act of practicing gratitude. So I'm going to leave that thought with you. Look for the things around you that you can find that you can show gratitude for, and take me up on that challenge of appreciating those things. Take the time, even when moments of despair, to look for the silver lining that's there. If you sit long enough and you contemplate and you look around, you will discover that silver lining, and you can change the very fabric of your being, and you can also be the one that helps others see the gratitude where they only see despair. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of The Language of Leadership. Please share the show with your friends. We're getting a lot of questions. We're getting a lot of inquiries. So I got to thank you for all the enthusiasm and all the episodes that you have shared. It's making a difference, and that's the whole purpose of this podcast. So thank you for your support. We really do appreciate it. So look for the gratitude rampage of appreciation form that we'll attach in the show notes. And I hope you have a blessed holiday and Christmas. And we'll be back next week with another episode of The Language of Leadership. Take care. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Language of Leadership. This podcast is dedicated to help you navigate your leadership journey. You will learn the language and skills you need to be the leader you want to be. Remember, the language of leadership is an art. It is why your team wants to follow you. Take care.